Today, I'm super excited to have Petra Wille joining us today. As someone who's led product teams, I know it can be really hard building outcome-oriented teams and helping people develop and grow into their roles. And as a product leader, people are really your product, and coaching is really how you get there. And I'm really excited to have Petra share some of her vast experience as an independent product leadership coach and author who's helping product teams boost their skill sets and up their game. So whether you're building an outcome-oriented product team yourself or looking to improve how you coach and develop others, this talk and hopefully the Q&A time that we've got afterwards should be helpful in identifying the essential product leadership skills you need to help your people grow. Welcome, Petra.
Okay, so then once again, hello, lovely product people. So glad to be here today to talk about the 5 main ingredients that a product leader needs to become an actual great product coach for your direct reports and for the folks you're actually working with, sometimes even your peers. I will start with some slides, but as Scott already pointed out, we decided to have a pretty interactive session. So there's time for Q&A afterwards. Already grab pen and paper and take some notes maybe while we are talking. Let me just super briefly introduce myself for those who never stumbled upon the stuff that I'm doing. I'm, as already written in the chat, based in Hamburg, Germany. I am a product leadership coach, and it really is my mission to help heads of products and product leads, however your title is. If you're leading product managers, I'm talking about you, becoming the best product management coach their employees ever had, and to help product organizations to become more successful. And I'm focusing on people development. So it's all about people development when I'm on stage. And Scott was brave enough to say, we have enough community people that are product leads. So totally happy to have you on stage talking about this product development bit of product leadership. So that's why we're here today, I'd say. Are you ready to dive in? So we all know that product management is a super hard business to be, and we expect a lot from our product people. We expect them to be good in understanding underlying problems that users and our companies are having, finding solution to those problems. And we want them to come up with meaningful plans, how we actually can tackle all these things to come up with an actual product. We ask them to work in cross-functional teams with many people working in lateral leadership functions. We ask them to optimize the product based on user feedback and all these kind of things. And in most of companies, we ask them to do this in a more or less agile way. Things are constantly changing. People need to adapt. So it is a challenging job. And as many professions require a T-shaped profile where the vertical bar of the letter T represents expertise in a single field, and the horizontal bar is, the ability to collaborate across disciplines with experts in their fields. We are looking more in an 8-legged creature here. So product people are more an octopus-shaped, octopus-shaped form, personality type, so to say. And based on many years of experience and observations from all sorts of product organizations, coaching those product organizations, working with heads of product and product leads are usually not playing a super active role in developing their product people. So it is often something they put to the sidelines because they have to focus on the product work, setting the strategy and all these kind of things. And I think it's the right thing to do, because if the product isn't good, company will be out of business maybe at some point. But still, the people development part, if you streamline it a bit, if you know some good tips and tricks on how to actually formalize some of the people development, I think it is still something super valuable to do. Really will upgrade your team, hopefully, and all your PMs will get better in what they do. So you could help them to become this 8-legged creature to some extent. And over the years, I saw some pattern, what helps PMs to really take their own self-progression journey serious. So it's not that we want to develop them on their behalf. That's not something that is actually working. But you could spark some of their, hey, I really want to learn this. I really want to get better in this. And I have these 5 main ingredients usually that I talk about when it comes to this people development game. Walking you briefly to the ingredients, and then we're looking into them in detail. So what you need is a solid definition of what you think it takes to be a competent product manager in your company and in your environment. There are many, many articles written about what makes a competent product manager, but always I would encourage product leads to really tailor this to the needs of your organization and really reflect on what makes a competent PM, so to say, in your environment. Then number 2 is a clear idea of where each PM is today and where their next what the next step for them should actually be. Then a shared vision. So the 2 of you, you and your direct report, you and maybe a peer, if it's a peer coaching situation, you need to have this shared vision of what this next step could look like, how they could actually tackle that. So that would be a good thing to have. And then it's a development plan. Super hard to usually come up with this development plan. So what are the things that they need to get better at to succeed in their role? And last but not least, a commitment to following up. That is super important ingredient as well. Sometimes we leave them alone with their, hey, that's the next step you could take, or that's the next thing you should learn. And then we never ask again. And a bit of nudging always helps them to get focused on this, on their journey. This is hard work, but ingredient number 1, that's what we're looking into now. So this solid definition of what makes a competent product manager in your situation, that is hard work. You once have to create and put a lot of effort in this definition. But once you've done it, you can ideally use it for many years with only some minor adjustments. So it's a one-time effort. To come up with this definition of a good PM, reflect on, here we go, personality traits that you think make a great PM. So create a list of skills and know-how, that's the second part, and competencies that they should have or should develop. And consider the general responsibilities of PMs here. And finally, list the values they should share with the rest of the company or team. Some companies have company values, then you just can use them here, or you have product organization values, or you use the agile values. It's always a nice list to look into. You could actually copy from there after you reflected, is that the right values that I want to add to my competent good PM framework? And if you're having a hard time doing this, you might want to check out my product management wheel, in short, PM wheel. It's a framework that I offer. You can download it on my website for free. And it's a great place to start with this know-how, competencies, and skills bit. There are other ones out there, the PM Daisy, of course, Marty Kagan has a competent PM description. So it's not necessarily that you have to use mine, but go seek for inspiration and then really create this, okay, what are the skills, the know-hows, and the responsibilities that I actually think a competent product manager needs if working in my team or my product organization or our company. Just to give you an idea about the personality traits, and again, I would encourage you to come up with your own list. I had a reflection some years ago and thought about, okay, what maybe are mine? The list in the end was, I don't know, 20 items long, so way too many. I focused on 6 of them. And I usually want to see all of them when I do job interviews. I really search for for signals in the interviews that people are having these personality traits, because it's hard to train for these underlying personality things. And for me, it is curiosity is one thing. I deeply believe that product people are curious about the world, how it works, processes. And so whatever the product and the industry is, usually great product people are like, oh, interesting. Tell me more about what you're doing. Then it's emotional intelligence for sure. Some people like to put empathy instead of emotional intelligence. I just picked emotional intelligence, EQ, because there are books written about it, and I could read a bit more and point people in this direction if I want to actually reference that. Then for me, it's intellectual horsepower. So are they really quickly interacting with bits of know-how or new pieces of knowledge they gain, data, can they process all the data that they have to juggle in their job? So that's the intellectual horsepower. Then adaptability was already talking about this, right? Things are constantly changing. And if people are frustrated by change and not good in adapting to certain settings, then maybe they might not end up being the best product manager on this planet. Wants to make an impact, super important to me. That's actually how they get things done. So they really want to make the difference, want to have an impact, want to deliver things to customers, want to see them using it, want them to see, want them to change behaviors, all these kind of things. And then last but not least, there is a bit of a, and I'm still not sure how to put this, nice to spend time with, likability, sense of humor bucket. You see, it's super hard even for me to really pinpoint what I'm talking about here, but it gives me enough framing for interviews or for conversations that I'm actually having with people. Briefly touching on the PM wheel that I was already talking about, it comes with 8 buckets. So that's my definition of a competent product person and what they actually need to be capable of. Are they able to understand problems or find meaningful problems to solve in this world? Are they then able to prioritize what of these problems are the ones that actually worth solving for the company? Are they good in finding, iterating on solutions? So that is a bit of the discovery bit that we usually talk about, right? Are they able to do some planning? No matter how your roadmap looks like, you need to do a bit of planning. Get it done is the actual work with the team. So that's maybe the stand-ups, the rituals, the daily grind, so to say, of product management. Listen and learn is this, okay, now we've shipped something. Now we need to iterate on it. And maybe we need to work on another increment of the software bit. What are people saying? How are they using it? How can we tweak it? Team, growth, and agile are separate topics. So it's not kind of in this process thing. Team is more of, has this product person reflected on how teams work and if they can motivate a team and how can they motivate a team? So what's their take on that? Is that something they're interested in? Growth is really the personal growth. I want it to be on the wheel so that I don't forget to talk about their personal growth when having one-on-one conversations. That's why I put it there. And last but not least, it's agile. Some people say like, what, that's so intertwined with getting it done. Why is it a separate bucket? To me, it is a separate bucket because in the coachings, I still meet too many product people, never heard of something like the Agile Manifesto or Agile Principles or Agile Values. So the pure basics of how they work. They know that they should have a backlog somehow and maybe have a stand-up, but it's not that they know why they should be having this or that they could tweak a task board or create their own task board. So that's why I think Agile is something a competent product person actually needs to dive into. Each of the buckets comes with a ton of questions if you download the full PDF. So then it's really like, are you able to do this? Are you able to conduct user interviews? Have you heard of biases and all these kind of things? Not all questions might be relevant for you. Please customize it. I even on my blog put some blog posts on how people customizing the PM wheel, and they're really dramatically customizing it. And I would encourage you to do the exact same thing. It's more of inspiration, so to say. And if you put all the effort in it and came up with your definition of what makes a good product manager, then all the other discussions you will be having are way easier. Was already referencing to job interviews, but one-on-ones easier to prepare because you could use some of these questions and just ask them in one-on-ones if you don't have the time to prepare. Performance review, super easy because everyone gets assessed with this kind of PM wheel thing that you then hopefully create and customize. So it's less personal. The feedback is less personal because everybody gets the same, hey, look, that's you, that's your competency profile. That's where I think competent product people are. And there are some gaps. So now let me offer you some help to actually close those gaps. I strongly believe in that is what a great product leads or companies do. They just help their people to close these gaps. So that brings us to ingredient number two. You need to have a clear idea what actually is. So you have, no, sorry, let me start again. You need, once you created this definition of good, do an assessment for your whole product team, but with your customized framework, so to say. And then you have a clearer picture of what is your opinion about everybody on the team, and not only opinion, it's a bit more because are they able to conduct user interviews? Yes, no, to what extent? Still a bit of an opinion, but at least you have it in really kind of certain buckets so that you could actually talk about the things where you maybe think there is a gap or something like this. And then you should invite them to do the same exercise. But for the time being, it is you doing that to really form your opinion and to see what you actually think. And another thing that I encourage you to do is have a clear vision of what they could become. So what is actually something they could achieve in, let's say, 3 years from now? And it does not have to be a concrete role description or a promotional plan or something like this. But sometimes you have this impression of skills they're having or particular strengths where they're actually good at. And then that is something that you could actually highlight over the course over the next months or years or projects they will be working on. And then another thing is think about a next bigger challenge. So in a perfect world, what would you like to assign them to make sure they are learning the things necessary to become this even more competent product person? Super interesting exercise. Could be something you could be doing today or tomorrow. Reserve 30 minutes in your calendar and then just like quickly think about, okay, in an ideal world, where would I assign them to? A bigger team, more strategic product to work on. So maybe they need to learn more about strategy. So then that's something that you would like to do. Or they need to learn how good they actually already are in what they do. And then maybe onboarding new and more junior colleagues is something they could actually be doing. So a next bigger challenge can be something rather small, giving a talk, go on stage, all these kind of things. So that might be a next bigger challenge. And once you have this vision for your PMs, now you need to make sure that you are on the same page and that they agree with your idea of their next steps. And sometimes this only requires a quick conversation to reach agreement. But sometimes, especially when you think the PM is far from where they need to be, it may be a much harder conversation. It requires providing your PM with an open and honest feedback about their current role. But as a product lead, it is your responsibility to help your product people to get better at what they do. And this won't magically happen. So make sure you provide them with the necessary feedback. And as already said, it's a bit of tough love, but this kind of definition of good will help you to have these conversations. And if you're still uncomfortable, so I wrote a chapter about giving feedback in my book, Strong. There is other books like Making a Manager, Radical Candor. All of this is about giving feedback. And that is super important to have a bit of a framework to give feedback, even critical feedback, the tough love things to your product folks out there. No matter how hard it is or it was to discuss the gaps in their skill set, make sure you're helping them to see where this journey might end. So if they're learning new things, if they put all the effort in, then share your vision of what they could become. That's why we did this vision exercise. Inspire them and really help them to picture this brighter future for them. Sometimes it is even maybe be beyond your current company. That is what great leaders do as well. So it's not so much a thing of, yeah, okay, but if you cannot learn it here, where should you actually be learning it? But if you're searching for this next bigger challenge, sometimes, yeah, crazy opportunities arise within your company's context that you would not have seen if you would not have done this next bigger challenge exercise. Yeah, let me maybe add one other note. If you're sharing your vision and if you're sharing your observation and if you're giving them a lot of feedback, then always stay super open to their feedback and to their take on it. A lot of people just like take all these things, go digest, and then come back and say like, hey, finally somebody pointed out something and now let's work on some things. But you may experience some pushback, and that is always kind of the best thing to have, because then is when the real conversation starts, right? So they're pushing back, say like, hey, Petra, I really don't share your opinion in this one. And now you're talking. So really embrace this pushback if it is actually coming, expect that, plan for it, and then just listen to them and what they have to actually tell you. So now you have conducted the assessment, you have identified some gaps, so to say, and they are up for closing them because they understood how good they could become if doing so. So let's just like pick a random example, which is prioritization, for example. Then that is a bit of their headline for their next developmental activity, so to say. But then you have to come up with a development plan. And that is ingredient number 4. And the plan needs to contain some small and actionable steps towards something that I call the future self. Your goal is to find this one topic with your PMs, and you already did in our example. So we already identified maybe prioritization is it. Could be user interviews, could be storytelling, you name it. You're finding those by using your assessment, and then you put them as a headline on top of the future self. Here is one example. That's the prioritization example. Again, it's on my website. You can download it, but it's super simple. You could actually draw it on a napkin. So it's an as-is description of how they currently feel about this headline thing. So prioritization, for example, what works well, what doesn't. Usually it's a 300 to 900 words text that is helpful. Here is a super brief version of it. So for example, here, the product manager has constantly to argue about the particular order of backlog items. People constantly questioning, hey, why have you put this in that order and not in a different order? How's your prioritization work? And recently they started to talk behind their back that Petra is not good in prioritization and they don't get what I'm actually doing there and why I'm a product person or something like this, to whatever extent, right? Then the to-be description would be, how would they know that they have improved their prioritization skills, and how could others see that they've really worked on this capability? Another 300 to 900 words description. Here are just some bullets. Then action items. So what could get them closer to this to-be description? Here is just like, okay, we need to reflect on how we're prioritizing. Then we need to inform ourselves how are others dealing with this. Then we have to find our way of prioritization. We have to apply it to our backlog. We have to see how this is landing with the stakeholders. And if we're not explaining things well and they're still questioning us, then we maybe need to do the cycle again. You have to help them come up with this development plan to some extent. So usually the as is and the to be description is something they're able to do, but action items are sometimes hard to come up with. And I think it is something you could easily help with. So it's really about, is it just like a know-how thing? So do they have to read and to consume more things to really close this gap? Or is it applying something in their context? So have they to learn something and then apply it and help them to find the situation where they could actually applying it? Is it about contributing to the company? Because if you start sharing what you learned, you sometimes really learn even more or get a bit more of self-confidence or these kind of things. So that could be things you could be helping them with. And last but not least, ask them about what timing or what time frame they want to give themselves for this particular future self. I usually advise to always have a development plan. So there's always a future self that they're working on, more or less. But it's not only one. So don't do prioritization, user interviews, and storytelling at the same time, because they have a lot of work to do. Usually their calendars are super packed. PMs are busy, as all of you know. So it's more of a 20 minutes a week, dedicated time. Here, really consistency beats intensity. Really every week, work on your prioritization skills a bit and see where it actually takes you. So that would be my recommendation. Focus on one thing, help them to find these action items, help them to set a bit of, okay, it's a 4 months thing, maybe it's an 8 weeks thing. And last but not least, a commitment to follow up. I strongly recommend to do this in your one-on-ones, once or twice, or every other week. It really matters on how often you're doing it. And it's more a thing of asking them how much they want the nudging, because some people really are super happy with just like, hey, and are you still working on your future self thing? Are you fine? Do you need my help? And then they say like, no, all good, I did. That's perfectly fine. Some really need a Slack message, an email reminder, whatever it is, but it helps you to put them in the driver's seat for all of this if you ask them how they want to be reminded of the things that they're currently working on, because it's so easy forgotten in the daily grind again that they actually wanted to work on these things. If you do all of this, you can expect at least 4 positive things to happen. Your product managers will feel really valued and welcome in your team and in the company. And they will learn, and they will therefore tend to stay, because what people really looking for, and you know it, Daniel Pink drive, mastery, autonomy, and purpose. And everybody loves a good challenge, and everybody loves to learn something new and to work on something and to work on this mastery bit, right? The product will evolve a lot over time, because if every product manager on your team gets better, in the long run, the product will get better, and hiring gets a lot easier, because actually people are drawn to companies where the product leads invest some of their time in product development. And I bet now some of you are asking, how am I supposed to do this? I have too many direct reports, and I would be doing one-on-ones all day long if I followed this advice. If that is the case, then let me be frank here, then you may want to look into your hierarchy, so to say, and if you have to have that many direct reports, because if you don't have a bit of time at least to invest on each of your directs on a regular basis, then the burden of development is completely up to the product managers, and it will take them way longer to improve. So that is kind of the downside of that. And your product organization may remain mediocre, so to say. So then really try to bring your direct reports to a level where you could invest a bit of time in their personal development. Yeah, I think that is it. Let me just like quickly recap. So you want to have a solid definition of what makes a competent product manager in your environment. Then think about every person on your team and answer these questions. Where do they stand today compared to my definition of a good PM? Where could they, what could they become in the long term? So a bit of your vision for them. And what would be the next bigger challenge I would love to assign them to in an ideal world? That's how you just like prime yourself to find the right opportunities. Then share your vision with them and see if they agree or if they have comments on the vision, if they have something different in mind. Help them to create a development plan. So help them to find their headline. Could be with the PM wheel, could be with one of the other assessments I was mentioning. And then support them with their own self-progression journey by following up on this future self thing regularly if they actually ask for it. Yeah, so I think this is it for the time being. And now I'm super curious what the questions are. Scott, help me with the Q&A.
Thank you for
I stopped screen sharing.
Thank you for sharing. And I think as I give a little bit of time for everybody to come in with their Q&A questions, I know we got Hussein's got a couple there to start, but I'm going to jump in maybe with just one of my own, maybe to warm things up here a bit. But thinking back on your kind of product career and kind of the experiences you've had as a product manager, I'm curious, like what led you to write this book? Was there an experience that you had, I guess, in this position, either as a leader or as a product manager, that maybe caused this energy here?
Yeah, so two things. So first of all, I have been privileged enough to have a product coach early on in my career. So my company actually paid somebody for doing this. So I experienced firsthand of how it actually feels if somebody has an idea of how good product management looks like, and is to some extent even a great teacher, helped me to unpack some of these things and to understand why it is crucial to learn storytelling to a certain extent, right? So that is one thing. And then the other thing is that I really see so many product people that actually have nobody to talk to. So it's pretty common that they try to read. So they're all pretty active. They're all keen to learn. They all, to some extent, are part of these communities like the one you are running. But still, they need a bit of help to apply some of the things that they learn in their situation. And it's not always the case that product leads are up for that. So sometimes we end up discussing a lot of these things in the product coachings. And that's why it's a bit of a, please, product leads, join me in this effort of upskilling product people and help them apply what they learned. So
yeah, totally.
That's why I wrote the book.
Yeah, we all need the therapy, I guess you could say. And then the coaches are great.
Yeah.
The coaches are great at that on that side. I'm going to paraphrase some of the questions that are coming in on this side. I'll start with Hussein, who had one of the first ones here. Is when it comes to growing a PM that's just started their journey, what are your thoughts on structured learning opportunities like courses, workshops, and stuff that they can kind of be directed to? And what's the best way to help them learn the basics, the fundamentals of product?
That again, so I think it really helps reflect on how they learn best. Ask them how they learn best. A lot of people know how they learn best. So if it's listening to podcasts, or is it more like going to a training? Is it more training on the job? So if they say like, actually, I'm really a practitioner, I want to learn while actually watching others, then maybe job shadowing is something that you actually should look into, and just like, find a rather senior person that actually is happy to take them on for the next 3 months or 4 months or something like this. So that is always a great thing to do. Trainings is always a good thing. There's some great basic product management trainings out there, but then help them to apply what they learned. So there needs to be a bit of a follow-up session. And whenever I send somebody to a training, I always want them at least to write a small summary in Slack and share it with the product community. So really this kind of giving back, reflecting what I learned, make sure that they have time to reflect. What else is, some people like this reading books things a lot. So I tend to meet a lot of young product folks that have like this, really like huge staples of books that they already read. And then again, the same, curate the experience for them, tell them, okay,
I'm horribly as guilty of that, as you can see from my camera lens there.
I love it. Yeah, me too, to some extent. But for the junior folks, you need to curate it. Tell them they don't have to read all of them, and really tell them, okay, that's the 2, read those. And then I help you to pick the things that you want to try first. And it's always learning at the job is best. And so reflect about if it's know-how that you need to acquire. If it's know-how, then always the training is an option. If it's skills and competency, then you need to think about, okay, how do I help them to apply what they actually learned in their situation? And then, do it, inspect, adapt, and then do it again. And usually people have to go through this cycle twice before they actually have acquired the skill. So plan some time for them as well to learn.
Yeah, that's wonderful. That's a great answer. I'm going to jump on another one of Hussein's questions. When it comes to growing a PM that's just started their journey, or sorry, that's the same one. What am I doing here? Done. Take the next one. How do you build a case for having to support them and best invest? How do you build a case for having support to best invest time into direct reports development? As in, if you have too many, how do you ask for support? So it sounds like maybe a problem here of too many direct reports. How do you build a case for essentially being able to support them effectively when you've got too many direct reports?
There's one hack that might help in the beginning. So learning buddies is something that helped me in most of the situations where coaches of me have too many direct reports. Then we think about a clever framework of learning buddies. So how could we pair them up so that they could support each other in their learning journey? So that sometimes helps. So think about this. It still is a bit of effort to set it up, because you really, so again, it's your curational effort to think about, okay, maybe Ben has to talk to Leah and they would make a great match. And can Ben learn something from Leah and vice versa? In some teams that are rather mature, I just like hand this question over to the team, because they already know about their strengths and about what their learning goals are. That works if communication goes well and mood is good and all these kind of things. So then they can figure it out. That is the first quick fix, so to say. Yep. And then still you want to sort this out with having too many direct reports. how many you can take really highly differs. So I have coaches that still think like 17 is a nice number. Others say like, okay, I now have 5. And if I really want to invest in their career while taking care of the product and all our processes and the tools that we're using and talking to the board, all these kind of things, then 5 is more than I actually can take care about. So that is find the perfect number for you in your given situation. And then return on invest was a bit of the question, right? So how could you convince? Yeah, it's just like the 4 reasons that I had on the last slide or something like this. So it is really about hiring. So hiring is super expensive. All of us spend a lot of time in hiring new people, attracting new folks. And that is something that will get way easier, especially if you talk outside of your company about the people development stuff that you do. So it is a bit of effort. And then hiring will get way easier. And if people stick around, that is super good as well. There is a study, I don't recall the name, it's in my book, I would have to look it up, but it says like it costs you $60,000 if somebody's leaving your company because you actually have replaced them. So maybe a number like this would help. And people tend to stick around if they have this feeling of, hey, there's still something to learn here. And my product lead is actually great. I have budget to learn new things. I can actually talk to my colleagues and peers about these things. We have this nice learning community of practice culture here. And they even invest in one-on-ones and help me learning meaningful stuff and the stuff that actually I need to learn to become a more competent PM and remain employable, so to say, right? Yeah. So I think that is a bit of the case. So maybe find this number in the book. There's a study about it, how much it costs if people leaving.
Yeah, definitely. And I see there's a little comment in here, maybe an idea of sort of using this also as building a case essentially for decreasing the number of direct reports, that investing in this actually could have an ROI payoff in that context.
I strongly believe it has to some extent.
No, that's great. All of this, is it kind of applicable for any role? I guess like what people are maybe challenged with or struggling with in this is like, does it matter what PM kind of function I'm playing or what kind of role I'm playing in my product organization? Maybe you have some thoughts on that.
Yeah, it works. So the basic thing of you need to have a definition of good. Then you need to have a bit of an assessment. Then you find these gaps in somebody's competency. Then you help them see the same things, help them close these gaps with creating a development plan and with following up. That remains the same, no matter what you, even for developers, user research folks, that works. The only thing that has to kind of swap this. So my PM wheel would need to be taken out of the picture, and you need to have a really solid definition of what makes a competent front-end developer or user research person. So that is something that is changing. I'm still like, if you have something like this for engineering folks or user research design folks, share it with me because I'm constantly searching for these things. I'm about to publish a blog post about at least all the PM wheels that I'm aware of. So all these PM assessments out there. And I would love to hear more about all the other product folks that are actually working on us with on creating the product.
Yeah, that's cool. Have you seen sort of like centralized product management training programs built around these sort of 5 ingredients? That's another question here.
Yes, more and more. So there's more and more of these things are happening currently. That's what I see. So some companies tend to create internal product coaching roles. So that is something that is on the rise to some extent, so that people like me are actually working internally. Was running a project earlier this year where we did exactly that. So we actually were helping 4 internal product coaches to actually become better in what they do and help the whole organization to level all of them up a bit. So that is something. Then a lot of the companies that running product ops teams, the coaching bit and upskilling the product org is sometimes a large part of what they are actually doing. And then they are responsible for coming up with these trainings programs. But no matter if you have a product ops team somewhere, a community of practice usually does all of that. So it's a bit of sharing if you learn something on a conference, but sharing new tool you stumbled upon, all these kind of things, and what you liked about the tool, and really try to create this supportive framework where people share what they actually use in their day-to-day job and what helped them. And so, I see that a lot, and I really love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome there. I'm going to interject with another one of my questions, because I think part of this is maybe, I guess I'm going to reflect on the fact sometimes it's a little lonely at the top, so to speak. There's often only a single head of product, or really not a lot of people at that sort of top, part of the product organization. And how do product leaders themselves get this kind of support from the rest of their organization to evaluate essentially not only what's important to the rest of the product org and the rest of the product team, but also to evaluate their own progress and goals and stuff like that? Maybe some thoughts you want to share on that side.
Yeah, I think for product leaders, it's even more important to reach out to other product leads from other companies, because it is so lonely at the top, but there are so many of us out there, right? So I think events like that, where really like event hosts decide to, product leads, that's a target group. So why not sharing some stuff for them and content for them is super important. So all of you, look to the attendees list. Maybe you can find somebody you can pair up to discuss some things. That is always something super helpful. I'm running group coaching sessions for product leads, and that is maybe one of the biggest benefits, that they actually meet each other in these group coaching sessions, that they learn about what everybody's doing. And then months after the coaching ended, sometimes they still share stuff on the Slack community, and hey, I've built this new roadmap with my whole team. Can somebody just like tear it apart and tell me what we've done good and what is still missing and stuff like this? So I think that would be my biggest advice.
Yeah, it sounds like just having like a cohort of buddies that you can talk with is important, right? Relationships. Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, we'll have we're working on some things in our own community on that side to help in the coming years. So I'm really excited to make those available in the future. I'm going to jump back into some of the other questions. How do you approach providing critical feedback, and what's the most productive way to do this?
That is a highly personal question, because everybody has to find their own way of providing feedback and how they actually do it. Some people are super good in doing this. I always need a lot of preparation, because I actually not in my coaching role. As a coach, it's super easy to provide critical feedback, because it's actually why the people are coming. They want to hear what I think they could get better at, right? So in my coaching role, easy peasy. When I was in the leadership role, way harder, and I always had to prepare for it. So if it needs to be quick, and that would be a recommendation, so have a quick framework that you could use in your head when something happens where you have to give situational feedback. So immediately situational feedback. And for me, it's like situation, behavior, impact. So that's my kind of SBI. That's what my head then usually does. And it's kind of, okay, what is the situation? What is the behavior of the person that I actually want to point out where they should maybe think about? And what is the most likely negative impact that I'm afraid this could be having to their career, and what damage it could do? And that, for example, is something that gives it a bigger framing. So that is something that you need to have. So have something that you could use if in a situation you want to give critical feedback. And then always, the rule is always criticize in private and praise in public. So that is rule number one, always use that. And if it's more of an annual review that you want to prepare, hopefully you're not only giving reviews annually, maybe it's quarterly or every other month. Then it's something like the PM review. Then you need a bigger structure, something that everybody is familiar to, and otherwise it's too personal. And then try to bring your feedback back to this bigger framework. So that would be my short answer to that.
Yeah, I know it's a pretty complex question to answer in some cases. A lot of, I know like the key takeaways I always remember from my sort of time working as a product leader is like the importance of the feedback being timely at the time that it actually occurs is most relevant, not like months later bringing something up. And then the other piece is, like I said, a bit of a structure to that, how you're going to provide that feedback, either using SBI or like there's another framework I used to utilize called Dear. That was similar kind of thing, but it was like same kind of idea of like making sure that it's got a structure or a way in which to converse and talk about that, and a way to put accountability on the people around resolving those kinds of issues or problems. We're at 10:45. I'm going to jump in with a few more questions here. It looks like we're still getting some that are coming in. So
nice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's great.
Keep them coming.
How best to manage a mixed level experience in the team? So you got like maybe some very senior people, some very maybe junior people, some very opinionated PMs. How best to kind of nurture collaboration and knowledge sharing amongst all of them, and probably I imagine a little bit of that, managing that growth across that group as well.
Super good question. Actually, there was one of the last chapters I added to the book. The book was already finished, and then I added this how to deal with the senior product folks chapter, because there was something that was missing, because they have this tendency of super stressful but rather boring what they actually do, because you put a lot of weight on them. They're senior, they know what they do, so they have strategic projects and products to take care of usually, while they know the drill. So right, they're not learning anything new, they just do it again and again and again. So that is for sure something you want to look into. So how to keep your seniors engaged, and that is something that really needs to have a bit of a, think it through and really think what are steps. So I have this tendency to say like one new thing a year. And sometimes that is kind of a new team and product to take care of. Sometimes it's maybe you're the one taking care of the community of practice and build this up and create momentum while you're still working on your team. Sometimes it's really step a bit back from what you're currently doing and try to be our external voice so that people recognize that we are a great product organization. So it really, put a bit of effort in that. How do we keep the seniors engaged and entertained? Yeah. And again, leveraging what they already know and make sure they have the time to share what they already know with the more junior people on the team. It's more of a timely effort usually. Yeah. So grant them really the right to do so. It's offsites maybe where you don't have the, let's come up with the next set of OKRs in this offsite, more of a undirected, let's exchange whatever we learned, let's spend time together. And then people usually start to talk about business and all these kind of things and what they read and that stuff. It's more of a time issue than it usually is of a structuring the issue. So give them the time and the mandate to actually come up with something to form this community of practice. And encourage some of the seniors to help you with that. I think that is maybe, again, the short answer. It's complex again.
Yeah, I know it's complex. Yeah, definitely. Never a perfect answer to some of these. I mean, that's maybe another reason to hire a coach or Petra for that matter. So I'm going to combine maybe a couple questions here because I think maybe a bit of people wondering like, how do I just kind of essentially get started? And so there's one here that's sort of in the context of how do I get my manager to start doing this with me? And then there's also one that's kind of related to how do I sort of come up with this vision of where PM could go? So maybe you got some tips of just about how to get going, get momentum behind this.
The future self is the short answer. So if you want to start with all of this, then start with the future self. Because even if you don't have a super structured approach to find these overall development topics, you still could find them. So people usually have something like, I think storytelling is something I would like to get better at. And then just use this and use the future self to give it a bit more structure and to give it a bit more of this, okay, let me help you to find some action items and give me some inspiration on this action item thing and all these kind of things. So I think if you want to start somewhere, then start with the future self. Once you did this future self thing, then you maybe want to work on your feedback, giving feedback capabilities. Once you've done that, then you could create something like the future self that usually needs a lot of self-reflection, what you think a great product person should look like. And once you did this, combine it with your new acquired feedback skills and just like make sure that the people understand where you see their gaps and development areas and all these kind of things. So that's how you usually could get started. The harder question is how to ask your boss actually to do some more of these things with you. Usually if they don't care, so if they're not yet doing at least some people development with you, if there is no one-on-ones, no feedback, then it's super hard. And I would advise you to rather go seek a learning buddy and a colleague who is interested in working on that. And then you could use something generic. So then use my unadapted PM wheel, and that helps you to identify your first things you want to look into, plus the future self. But if your boss shows some interest in doing that, then just do it together. So I had a lot of success when product people are in my coachings. I sometimes do the PM, not always, but sometimes we do this PM wheel exercise. And then I ask them to take it back to their boss and ask for feedback so that we have not only their assessment and my assessment, but their boss's assessment as well. And that sometimes really gets them curious, and it's a bit like, this is not that bad. Maybe I should use it for all of my team. And that's sometimes how this is going, but only if they have a certain level of interest in people development anyways, which they hopefully have. As said, if there is nothing at all, rather go search for a learning buddy and an external mentor. Then go find an external mentor that could help you with that.
Yeah, that's cool. That's really great. Yeah, and I know like I've had pretty good success with these tools. I know your book and also the one, the PM Daisy, of sometimes just taking those and showing up with it. I'm showing up at a one-on-one, and it's like, hey, you know what? I spent this weekend going through this exercise, and here's where I kind of think I'm at, and let's have a conversation about that. And all of a sudden, it's like opens up a bunch of doors that maybe didn't exist before. So sometimes it just takes one or the other side kind of leaning into this activity to actually get the ball rolling on it.
Yeah,
That's cool. I'm going to paraphrase another few more questions. I think we've got enough time still here. How can you approach this with folks that are working on maybe products that are outside of, I'm going to try to figure out how to kind of express this a bit, because I know this is Duncan's question. It's really particular. Duncan works in an agency environment where each PM has its own clients. And really what we want to be able to do here is make sure that they, I'm probably not going to capture this correctly, but so I'm going to just read it. How might we approach supporting product folks who are working on products that are outside of our own area? In other words, what do you do when you're not personally involved in what reports are working on? Think agency setting where each PM has its own clients. Not sure how to quite answer that question.
Yeah, maybe it helps to picture you really like only in this coaching role, because as a product lead, you usually are taking about people, process, and product. So you need to think about the product, about how everybody's working and what's the best way to do so, and all these kind of things, and how your team looks like, and how you should hire new people, and who should be promoted, and people development. So you have a lot of responsibility. But maybe in Duncan's case, it is more of a, okay, you are solely a coach. So it's not that you have to help them come up with meaningful product strategies. It's really, you can focus on helping them to become better in what they actually would like to do. So if they say like, hey, look, we have this super crazy customer and it's hard to talk to them, then maybe offer them to help on stakeholder management. And maybe you could curate a bit of their journey and all these kind of things. Again, so share your experience. I would assume you are an experienced lead still, so you can share what you've done and what you learned throughout your career. So then you're really more of a product coach, so to say, or for your product management folks, and not so much interfering with what products they're delivering and all these products decisions they're making, unless you have to. Because so the question is always, have they yet reached competence? Because if they have reached competence, then it's more of a coaching relationship. If they're not yet competent product people in your definition, then you still have to help them to acquire the know-how necessary and acquire the skills and competencies necessary. And then sometimes it requires you to say like, hey, have you heard about story mapping? Let me help create your first one. And then you're good to go to create more of them on your own or something like this. Then they need a bit more hand holding, so to say.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe too, like back to your point of like kind of like a center of excellence, or that kind of like that kind of forcing function of looking more across these different silos can be a really great piece of how we bring together all the people that are working in that product function to talk and share their best practices, to work together and to align on like what are the great traits of a good product person. Yeah. But
don't make it too much of a smallest common denominator game. So really still think about how would performance culture look like in this environment and all these kind of things, because sometimes otherwise it gets too boring. Everybody's just like, that's our basic standard for PMs across the board. And then it becomes a boring role.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think with that, I'm going to shift over to closing out and just providing a few details here. Just give me just a sec for some reason.